All right, we're here. Jonathan Macri, welcome back to the show.
What's up, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing well. Knowing what you know now, would you redo the Julius Randle cat trade?
Probably not. And I don't. I know that's going to come off as very disparaging to Karl-Anthony Towns, and it shouldn't be, because Cat's a very gifted player, and I do think that there is probably a world where he can be a successful winning player in the NBA. I'm not sure that this is the ideal situation for him. And Jalen Brunson, who was my favorite player, I'm not sure Jalen Brunson is the perfect running mate for him. I think Jalen Brunson probably needs a different type of running mate. I think Julius Randle was probably better suited for that role. All that being said, if the Knicks didn't make that trade, they were still out a center last year, so revisionist history, like where are you going to go get a five-man in a big season, or do you just punt that year and try to figure it out this past summer? Like, there's a lot of revisionist history that goes into a question like that, but given everything that we know in totality, would I go back and do it again? No, I wouldn't.
How much of the lack of shots coming from Karl-Anthony Towns lands on him, lands on Brunson, lands on Mike Brown? What's the percentage? Where would you go with the percentages there?
We could quibble about, does someone get, 45% of the pie versus someone gets 25%. It's on all of them. It's on every single one of them. And again, I don't think that any one of those parties is intentionally doing anything wrong. Like, I think Jalen Brunson is not, I don't think he's a selfish player. I think he does what he thinks he should do to give his team the best chance to win the game. I just don't think it's instinctual for him to always be looking for a guy like Cat. I think Brunson works best where he looks for his own shot, and then when he draws the help, he finds the open man, as opposed to a more traditional pick-and-roll point guard. So I think that's an issue. And then, look, Mike Brown, I think, both him and Karl-Anthony Towns have made comments to this effect. I think Mike Brown wanted Karl to play a certain type of way coming into this year. I don't think Karl was thrilled with being asked to play a certain type of way, maybe similar to how Domantas Sabonis was used back in Sacramento. And I think a lot of the issues this season stem from the fact that those two have not seen eye to eye. Now, recently, Mike Brown has made some comments alluding to the fact that they are perhaps simplifying the offense for Karl-Anthony Towns, adjusting the offense to fit Karl-Anthony Towns' skill set. And I think up until last night, you saw some better stuff from Cat. But I think there are still issues, and these issues go back to last year, that have nothing to do with Mike Brown. That when you face the better teams that have the personnel to really stifle Cat and where he likes to go and how he likes to operate, you're going to get underwhelming performances like we got against Cleveland.
I think the biggest percentage of the pie actually should go to Jalen Brunson, but it's not really his fault in a lot of different ways. He is what he is, a great scorer, not a great facilitator, not a great defender. I think Knicks fans are overrating this guy. I really do, man.
Brunson?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're nuts. I think you're absolutely crazy. I think
no, because we knew Melo was a great player. We knew Patrick Ewing was a great player. I feel like Knicks fans put Brunson on that type of pedestal, and he's just not that, because he is a great scorer, but he doesn't manage the game well, and he can't defend.
He's not on the pedestal of Carmelo Anthony and Patrick Ewing. He's
not
higher.
to you. Oh, he's higher.
Yeah, Jalen Brunson is the greatest Knick I've ever seen. And I watched Patrick Ewing starting in 1994, which was probably a little past prime for Ewing. There's never been a leader on this franchise like Jalen Brunson since Willis Reed and Clyde Frazier. He is one of the 5 most gifted isolation scorers in the game today. He always tries to make the right play. He always goes out there and intends to do whatever he needs to do to help the team win. Defensively, obviously, that's a weak spot for him, but you could say that about a lot of the best scorers in the game today. And I think we've seen more than enough evidence over Jalen Brunson's time with the Knicks that if you put the right personnel around him, his defense is not going to be the thing that holds you back. I think the biggest issue with him and Cat and just like him in this starting 5 is, in order to make Jalen Brunson sing, get the best from him, you need to surround him with certain type of personnel, which we saw, by the way, in the 2023-24 team. when those lineups were absolutely killing it, both before the Randle injury and after the Randle injury. Honestly, go back and look at the numbers of him, Hartenstein, Josh Hart, and Dante DiVincenzo. Not exactly a murderer's row of NBA talent, but those guys killed each other because they played the right way and they played into Jalen Brunson's strengths. This team, as it's currently constructed right now, with this starting five in particular, they don't play to Jalen Brunson's strengths, which is why you see them struggle as a starting five, and yet go look at the numbers when he's out there with Mitchell Robinson. Absolute world beaters.
I do hear what you're saying, but I would also say that the supporting cast they have built around Brunson is pretty good.
Like in a vacuum, yeah.
You have Wingstop, you have Karl-Anthony Towns, one of the most skilled big men. Defensively, it doesn't really make sense. I know you say there are other great players that don't play great defense, but if you give them that supporting cast, I think you might be able to get a chip with some of these guys, some of these elite level players that we're talking about.
If you, in a vacuum, if you just look at New York's starting five, and I think their front office certainly did because they went out and got Mikal Bridges, they went out and got Karl-Anthony Towns. They thought that it would work perfectly. I think there's a number of problems, though. I think they have a problem because there's only one ball, and you have a guy like OG Anunoby that a lot of nights is relegated to the fourth option, and he don't like that very much. And I think he's a guy that needs to be in a little bit more of a rhythm to get going. You see him, the difference between him on nights where he gets a lot of opportunities, where he gets in the flow of the offense versus a night like last night and a lot recently, it's a rough watch. And I just don't think that this starting five, for as much as their skill sets theoretically complement each other, I don't think they have enough role players in that starting five. Like the one guy who you'd say is the closest thing to a traditional role player, Josh Hart, is a guy that you could exploit if you want to put a center on him and dare him to shoot like he did against Cleveland, went 2 for 8, completely hamstrung their offense. So I think the situation where Jalen Brunson would work best in, if we're really looking at it, would be to have more of a traditional number two. Again, not saying Julius Randle was a perfect player, far from it, but he was more similar to that kind of mode. And those two guys played off of each other beautifully when they were in lineups that worked. And then a bunch of role players. A guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, who Jalen Brunson went out there with him, and it looked like the most devastating lead guard in the NBA. So I'm not super hopeful that it's ever going to work with this five, but like you said, they're super talented, so maybe they figure it out.
How'd you feel about the game last night?
Not particularly good, but also not surprised. I think this team has been trending in this direction for a little while now. Look, I think clearly they are capable of winning big games and beating good teams. They beat the Spurs in the NBA Cup. They've had some other wins against quality opponents this year. But I think they are more dependent, perhaps, on their three-point shooting almost any other team in the league, because they don't have the defensive backbone and they don't have scorers other than Jalen Brunson who could get into the teeth of the defense and make stuff happen. Karl-Anthony Towns is not a guy you toss the ball to and say, here, go get me 25, 30 points. Like, you need to have a certain type of offensive system going on around him. So their threes weren't falling last night, just like their threes weren't falling in some of the games against Detroit this year. It makes it for a very uphill battle.
Knicks fans are hitting me up. You're going to see when the Knicks and Pistons play who the better players, but I don't think it has anything to do with that when it comes to Cade and Brunson. I think if the Pistons shoot the ball the way they shot it, they're going to win. If the role players don't shoot the ball the way they shoot it, the Knicks will win. I don't even think it comes down to Cade and Brunson.
I think Cade's been the better player this year. Obviously, even putting aside the offense, defense is not even close. I mean, he should be at the top of the MVP discussion, depending on the games played for other stuff. But if you look at how that Pistons roster is constructed, and I think this was very clear in the recent matchup between the games, they have Cade Cunningham as the head of the snake, and then everybody else on that roster is in service of Cade Cunningham and making him sing and making those minutes hum. It's a team full of role players. I mean, Jalen Duren's the closest thing they have to like a second star, and him and Cade have as good a two-man partnership as any two guys in the league.
So chemistry, you think it's better, but talent-wise, his supporting cast is nowhere near Brunson's, right?
I would say the Pistons are deeper in quality NBA players, but honestly, you look at the season Landry Shamet is having. Like, I know nobody wants to talk about Landry Shamet, but Landry Shamet's been awesome. He's like the Knicks' eighth man. They haven't been fully healthy, I don't think, all year because Deuce McBride is out now with an injury. But I think the bigger issue is the fact that on the Pistons, those guys know their role, they buy into their role, and they excel at their role, and everybody's role makes sense when you factor it into the larger ecosystem. I think the Knicks balance, you could talk all you want about the talent that they have, the talent still needs to make sense with which of the other parts. And I think when you look at the Knicks, and particularly the Knicks starting five, I don't think, and this is not a this year problem. This goes back to all the way back to last year, to last January when teams really started to lean into guarding Josh Hart with their center. But that's not even the only issue. There's tons of issues with the starting five. They just don't make sense together.
Do you think that Thibs firing was the right move in hindsight?
I think Thibs probably needed to go. I think he had worn out his welcome with certain people in the organization, and things had gotten a little bit too, I don't want to say toxic, but Mikal Bridges clearly had no love lost for Tom Thibodeau. I think, I'm not sure that OG Anunoby was necessarily the biggest fan of Thibs. There was certainly probably another role player or two who didn't love him, and needless to say, the front office and him were not seeing eye to eye because he didn't want to hear what they had to say. But Thibs was an exceptional in-game coach. You knew going into a series against anybody other than maybe Eric Spoelstra that Thibs was going to be at least on equal footing with whoever he was coaching against. And he knew how to get these guys to dig deep. That said, I remember not long ago, the narrative was the Knicks did not show up against good teams in the regular season. That was under Tom Thibodeau. Now it's a repeat of the same thing with what's going on with the Pistons and again last night against the Cavs. So I think it was a move that needed to be made. Was there a perfect candidate to replace him? I'm not sure. What I will say, though, is for as good a job as Mike Brown has done, and I do think that he has done a lot of good things as coach of this team, the fact that he has not seen eye to eye with Karl-Anthony Towns this season, I think has been one of the bigger issues, and there have been other things sprouting from that main problem.
Did you notice that Mike Brown went to no middle defense, and that's what Thibs brought to the NBA? It's a little ironic.
I think it's been a little bit of a challenge for Mike Brown figuring out the defense this season. Their defense certainly got better after he made some adjustments. Going into last night, they had, I want to say, the best defense in the league over the previous 15 games. Now, they played some patsies in that schedule, but still. To me, New York's defense, more than the scheme, comes down to one guy, and it's OG Anunoby. When OG Anunoby is playing as well as he can play at an all-defense, borderline defensive player of the year level, and he could really shut down whoever the opposing head of the stake is, everything else falls into place. Mikal could do his off-ball stuff. Josh Hart could grab the third most threatening perimeter player. You could hide Brunson and Towns a little bit more easily. But when OG is just kind of okay, and I thought, for instance, against Cleveland, he was just kind of okay, I think everything else kind of goes belly up on that end of the floor.
Is it fair to say that Cat and Brunson could be an unsolvable problem on the defensive end for a coach?
It's a tough question to answer because we have seen moments, stretches of games.
But that's like Josh Hart's jump shot, though.
Well, that's a little unfair because Josh Hart's up until before last night, he was shooting 40% from three this year.
But that's what I'm saying. Like Portland, he shot 40%. I remember. Then it goes down. Then it goes up. It's kind of like, but we got to be consistent.
This season has been up pretty much the whole year. Cat, we're talking about games at a time where maybe, you might have a good defensive possession here or there, a good half a quarter defensively, something like that. That's in there. He has it in there. He has it in him to play acceptable, passable defense. Active hands, moving his feet, really engaged. This season hasn't been there nearly enough, and yet you look at the on-off data, and they paint Cat as a really positive defensive player, and Brunson is the bigger issue. Now, I would agree that Brunson's defense has been the bigger problem this season, but he's another guy, I think lately, last 10, 15 games, he's brought it a little bit more on the defensive end. Is it an unsolvable problem? No. I don't think it's an unsolvable problem because I think you could have a slightly better than league average defense with those two guys, which is fine if you have one of the two or three best offenses in basketball. And too often against good competition, they don't have an offense that's anywhere near among the top two or three in basketball. And that, in a roundabout way, is the real Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns problem, because you would think that those two together on offense are an unstoppable combination, and they've been anything but.
Watching the Cavs last night, I know you're a huge James Harden fan. We've debated this before. Former scoring champ, former assist champ, former MVP. But do you think the Cavs have a legit chance to win a title this year?
I think they definitely have a chance to make the finals. I think that's legit. Like, I think Detroit should probably be the favorites. I would probably put Boston second because of the Tatum thing, and he's probably going to be coming back. Yeah, no, I think they absolutely have a chance to make the finals. And if you make the finals, who knows what happens? To me, I'm very encouraged. I would be encouraged if I was a Cavs fan by the fact that you don't have to have the ball in James Harden's hands in the fourth quarter of a close game. You could put the ball in Donovan Mitchell's hands and trust that he's going to be able to steer the ship. So if James Harden has one of his classic playoff performances, it might not kill you. Now, I think there's still some other things that they need to address, but I like the way this Cavs team is built. I think they're good.
Thanks for taking the time. Where can we find you, Macri?
You know where you can find me. Knicks Film Skool is the name for everything that we do. I am at JC Macri NBA on social media. And, yeah, man, it's always good to come on and spend a few minutes talking